Friends, in today's session we are going to continue with our topic of transportation in plants, and today we are going to start about simple plant tissues. So some of the diagrams, they are not present in my notes. I'll be using Google to explain some of the plant features. I know for most of you who are following my sessions, they are in schools, so you can use a biological science book or you can use understanding biology book. When I will be typing these notes, I will try to insert the correct diagrams from biological science or from understanding biology, because some of these diagrams, they are very difficult to draw them. But I hope you understand. Just the important thing is to understand the structure and how it functions. Understanding the structure for a certain part of the plant and then understanding how it functions. Then after understanding these two basic things, other things you can find them later. Now today we are going to start our session by discussing about the simple plant tissues. When we are talking of the simple plant tissues, we'll be discussing about the three types of cells. We'll be discussing about the parenchyma, the collenchyma, and the sclerenchyma. Now, simple plant tissues, it is because they are composed of only one type of cell. So let's say we are talking of the parenchyma. It is because the parenchyma is the only type of cell which is present. So the parenchyma, collenchyma, or sclerenchyma can be modified in different ways to perform different functions in plants. But the simple plant tissues, they are consisting of one type of cell. We shall discuss later of the xylem and the phloem, which are the complex plant tissues, or which are the compound plant tissues composed of many types of cells. Now let's start our discussion by discussing about the parenchyma. Now parenchyma cell, in its structure, they are usually roughly spherical or elongated. You can see my diagram here, how the parenchyma cell they are seen. So first they have thin peripheral layer of cytoplasm, they have nucleus, and then they have large vacuole, and they have middle lamella, intercellular air space, and thin primary cell wall, primary cellulose cell wall. You can notice some of the things here in this structure. First is the presence of the intercellular air spaces. This is not present in other categories of cell. Let us just try to move to Google and to see how the parenchyma cell they are looking in Google. Now I hope you can see this diagram from Google, the structure of a parenchyma cell, and you can observe here we have the intercellular air space, the primary cell wall, then you have the vacuole and cytoplasm. This is the unique feature of parenchyma cell. Let me just try to show you other categories of cell. Try to show you the collenchyma and the sclerenchyma so that you can observe the difference between them. Now, for example, in this diagram here, you can observe these are the parenchyma cell, the rough illustration of parenchyma cell, and you can see the presence of intercellular air spaces. A and B, they are parenchyma cell or parenchyma tissues. Then from there, we have collenchyma tissues. Here in A and B, you have collenchyma tissues. And you can see here the cells, they are spherical-like, but here they are elongated. They are elongated, and as you can see, there is no intercellular air spaces. The wall is lignified. And then when we are moving with him to sclerenchyma tissue, the appearance is quite different from these other tissues. Also, you can use even this diagram to see how they are different. Parenchyma cells. This is the longitudinal section. This is the cross section. So cross section, how the cells they appear. You can see the longitudinal section is as if it is similar in the parenchyma and the collenchyma. but as you can see here, there is no intercellular air spaces. Intercellular air space, which is labeled here, there is no intercellular air spaces. And if we are moving to Parenchyma, things are quite different. So we'll discuss later about the different specialization of Parenchyma cell. Parenchyma cell, they can be specialized to different categories of cell, as we shall discuss later. Now let's go back to our notes and see how the things they are going. So now we are discussing about the Parenchyma cell, and now we are going to discuss about the function and distribution of Parenchyma cell. We have already seen about the structure of Parenchyma cell. They are roughly spherical or elongated, and they contain intercellular air spaces. So the intercellular air spaces, they are very important in the functioning of Parenchyma cell. We are saying that the cells are unspecialized and act as the packing tissue between more specialized tissues. So this is their first function. They are unspecialized. So they can be specialized to different categories of cell, but they act as a packing tissue between more specialized tissues, as in the central pith of stem and outer cortex of stem and roots. Kwa tunavyokuwa tuna stem ya mti fulani, central pith inakuwa filled with the Parenchyma cell, or the outer cortex of stem and roots. They form a large part of the bark of the young plants. So young plant mara nyingi zinakuwa zina au Parenchyma cell. When Parenchyma cell they are tagged, yani that means when they are filled with water. Kama ulisoma session zilizopita, utakumbuka we discussed about turbo pressure, how the turbo pressure tend to happen. So we are saying that when the Parenchyma cell they are tagged, that means when they are filled with water, they become tightly packed and provide support for organs in which they are found. And the turbo pressure provides support more especially in herbaceous plant. This is particularly important in stems of herbaceous plants, where they form the main means of support. Now if you remember, we discussed about herbaceous plants, and I demonstrated some of the herbaceous plants which we normally see in our environment. Nikatolea mfano mazao kama mchicha ni herbaceous plants. Na ukikumbuka ni kwamba nisema herbaceous plants kama mchicha, jua linapowaka unanyauka. So herbaceous plant jua linapowaka unanyauka. Kwa nini unanyauka? Kwa nini majani yananyauka? Majani ambayo ni herbaceous, kwa nini yananyauka kwenye jua? Kwa sababu their support depends on water. If the cells they become tagged, that means they will have support. Lakini kama cells zikiruhusu water by transpiration, basi ile cells zinakuwa ziwezi tena kusupport mmea. Ndio maana mmea unafanyaje? Unanyauka, unaanguka. Lakini ni condition ambayo cells zinakuwa ziko strong, mmea unakuwa umesimama. So all of the plants, most of the plants ambao unaona zinanyauka, sio mmea unanyauka tu majani, no, unanyauka mmea wote unaanguka during sun. Yani kuna jua limewaka, kama umelima mchicha siku za mwanzo, kiwacha siku nyingi unakuta umenyauka kabisa. That is what we are saying, that these are the herbaceous plants. They depend on the turbo pressure, and the turbo pressure is provided by water. So we are saying that during periods of water shortage, the cells of such plants lose water, and this result to the plant wilting. Plant wilting ambako ndiko kunyauka kwa mmea. Plant wilting ambako ndiko kunyauka kwa mmea. So we are saying that the Parenchyma cell are metabolically active. Yani cells zinaishi, sio zimekufa. Zinaishi. Unaweza kusema kwa nini nasema? Kwa sababu tenda kuona huko mbele kuna nyingine ambazo zinakuwa zimekufa. Kwa hiyo kashangaa sana kwamba inakuwaje cell afu imekufa. Ni kawaida, inategemea na kazi yake inafanya nini kwenye plant body. Inategemea na kazi yake inafanya. So the Parenchyma cell, they are metabolically active, and they are the sites of many of the vital activities of the plant body. Many of the vital activities of the plant body, they require Parenchyma cell. Kwa sababu gani? They are living. So tunategemea Parenchyma cell tutazikuta na mitochondria za kutosha tu. Mitochondria nyingi tutazikuta kwenye Parenchyma cell. So a system of air spaces, kama tulivyosema, between the parenchyma cell we have the air spaces. Zile air spaces, they learn from the external environment where they open at the stomata, pores in the reef, or the lenticles, special slits in the wood stem. Kwa kama unakumbuka kwenye gaseous exchange and respiration, to discuss kuhusu stomata na to discuss kuhusu lenticles. Gaseous exchange in plants can take place through the stomata or the lenticles. So the lenticles and the stomata, they are connected with the intracellular spaces, and these intracellular spaces, they are filled with the air, intracellular air spaces. So why the intracellular air spaces, they are important? They are important because they ensure the gaseous exchange in the plants. So we are saying that a system of air spaces runs from external environment where they open as stomata or pores in the leaf or lenticles, special slit in the wood stem. These air spaces runs between the cells, thus allow gaseous exchange to take place between the living cell and the external environment. So you see, parenchyma cells, they are very important in the gaseous exchange. In absence of parenchyma cells which contain the intracellular air spaces, gaseous exchange would be impossible, because plants, the gaseous exchange is simply by diffusion, simply because we have these intracellular air spaces which allow the movement of air. So parenchyma cells are often sites of food storage. They are often sites of food storage, most notably in storage organs such as potato tuber, where the parenchyma cortex stores starch. Rare example occur of parenchyma cell storing food in a thickened cell wall. For example, the hemicellulose of dead seed endosperm. Dead seed uni mmea unaitwa dead seed. So hizi zote ni different function of parenchyma cell. Unaona kwenye gaseous exchange through lenticles and stomata. Unaona kwenye mambo ya storage of food kwenye potato, then kuna hemicellulose kwenye dead seed endosperm. Unaona, then tunasema kwamba the wall of parenchyma cell are important pathway of water and mineral salts. Wall of parenchyma cell, the important pathway of water and mineral salts transport through the plant. Substances may also move through plasmodesmata between the neighboring cell. So the walls of our parenchyma cell, they are the primary cell wall, and they are not lignified as compared with other categories of the simple plant tissues. So one among the very important thing to note that the parenchyma cell can be modified and more specialized in certain parts of the plants. They can be modified and they can become specialized to perform different functions. So can be modified and more specialized in certain parts of plant. Some examples of tissue that can be regarded as modified parenchyma are discussed below. Modified parenchyma, they are discussed below. So now we are going to discuss about the modified parenchyma cell which perform different functions in plants. So if you have a biological science book, you will just open the part which have explained about the histology. Histology is the study of tissues. So in the part of histology, they have explained about the simple plant tissues. So we are starting with the epidermis. Epidermis is the layer, one cell thick, that covers the wool of the primary plant body. So epidermis tend to cover the plant body. It is how, like in animals, we are talking of the epithelium. Most of the epithelium, they cover body parts, they cover body cavities. So in plants, we call them epidermis and not epithelium. So its basic function is to protect the plant. Its basic function is to protect the plant from desiccation and infection. Desiccation is simply the process by which water is lost from the plant, and due to a loss of a large amount of water, then at the end of the day the plant can dry. So that's what we call as desiccation. So the epidermis contain cuticle which prevent excessive loss of water, especially during severe hot condition or severe sun condition. And also the cuticle help to prevent the plant from infections. As we know, air itself contains different kinds of bacteria, different kinds of microorganisms like fungus and even viruses. Now most of fungus, they can infect the plants and they can cause different disease conditions. Kwa ndo maana kwenye mimea unakuta kuna ugonjwa sijui kungu, sijui nini, all of those is because of the infections. Kwa epidemis inasaidia kuprevent, lakini haina maana kwamba ndio ina prevent zote. Ingekuwa na prevent zote manake mmea usingepata magonjwa. Ndio maana hata kwenye human being tuna immunity, but immunity just help to fight with the diseases. Some of the infections, they will go beyond the ability of immunity, and if they go beyond that means will end up with the disease condition in this person. So during secondary growth, it may be ruptured and replaced by a cork layer as described in chapter 22, which is growth and development. So the epidermis can be ruptured in the process of growth of and development. In the secondary growth, it can be ruptured and it can be replaced by a cork. Kwa unaosema cork ni kama gamba la nje, ni kama gamba la nje la mti, gome lile la nje, gome la nje, yani achana ule mti mwenyewe kule nje kuna kama kuna cover fulani ile, ndio tunaita cork layer. Unaona, na ndio ambayo Robert Hooke alikuwa ameona boxes alizoziita cell. Uzuria tu sessions za cytology, hicho kitu kimeelezewa kwenye history of cytology. Now the structure of epidermal cell are elongated and flattened as shown in the figure below. Now hii figure ilitolewa kwenye biological science book, So hii diagram ilikuwa imetolewa kwenye biological science book, na kama unavyoweza kuiona kwamba tunakuwa kwa mfano hizi ni different categories of specialized epidermal cell. Yani unielewe kitu kimoja kwamba epidermis ni specialized parenchyma cell, lakini epidermis yenyewe inaweza exist kwenye different categories of cell. For example, we have the gourd cell. Sasa unaona kwa mfano epidermis zinakuwa ni cells zimekuwa arranged kama hivi. Unaona? Zikishakuwa arranged hivi, huku nje kuna layer of the cuticle. So ina secrete kitu tunakiita waxy cuticle. And this wax cuticle help to prevent water loss, which we call as desiccation, help to prevent desiccation, and also help to fight with the infections kama tulivyosema kule mwanzo. So the epidermal cells sometimes they can be specialized, or they can be modified to the guard cell, and the guard cell, they're the one which tend to open and close the stomata under the influence of the turgidity. The guard cells zikijaa maji zina close stomata, zikijaa maji zina open stomata, zikipungua maji zina close stomata. Very interesting, kwa sababu kwenye mazingira ambayo maji yako mengi zinajaa maji zina open stomata, mazingira hapa maji yako machache zinapungua maji zina close stomata. And we discussed the mechanism about the hypothesis for the closing and opening of the stomata huko mbele kwenye hii topic ya transportation. So unaweza kuona hapo kwamba for example hizi ni two guard cell, hiyo hole between tunaita ndio stomata hapo. So tunachokisema ni kwamba tenda kuziona hizo cell vizuri kule kwa Google, lakini tuendelee tuna kipindi kudiscuss this concept. Hizo cell ni picha tu tunaweza kuziona wakati wote. So the epidermal cell secretes a wax substance called cutin with a layer of variable thickness called cuticle. So wax, that means hii imekuwa made up of lipid. And tunavyojua property ya lipid yenyewe ni haipitishi water, it is water hating or hydrophobic. Kwa maana yake inasaidia kuzuia water isitoke, kwenye plant. So it is made up of the variable layer of the cutin called cuticle within and on the surface of the cell wall. This helps to reduce water loss by evaporation from the plant surface. as well as helping to prevent the entry of pathogens or the entry of infection. So the cuticle has two functions in plants, two major roles: to prevent infections and to prevent water loss, or to reduce, because sometimes tukisema prevent kidogo inaleta utata, so it's better tukasema to reduce water loss. So kwamba water hivi lost kabisa na kwa lost lakini kidogo, so it reduce. So nachokisema ni kwamba if the surfaces of leaves are examined in light microscope, it can be seen that the epidermal cells of dicotyledons leaves are irregular arranged and are often have waxy margin of the dicotyledonous leaves. They are irregular. As you can see in this figure 6.3b in BS. Now, while those of monocotyledonous tend to be more regular and rectangular in shape, as in figure 6.3c. So hizo diagram ndo hizi hapa tulitoa kwenye BS moja kwa moja. Hii ni nani? Ni dicotyledonous leaf. Huyu ni monocotyledonous leaf. So dicotyledonous leaf anakuwa ni irregular, ana wax margin na vitu kama hivyo. Wakati hiyo hapa anakuwa ni regular na vitu kama hivyo. So hicho ndicho ambacho tulikuwa tunakielezea hapa kwenye leaves. So at interval, specialized epidermal cell called gourd cell, guard like mlinzi fulani, gourd cell. So hizi seli ni kama walinzi fulani wanao prevent water loss, excessive water loss. Kwa nini? Kwa sababu in condition of water stress, guard cells zinafunga stomata. Zikifunga stomata, manake transpiration haiwezi kutokea, kwa sababu transpiration pia takes place through the stomata. So in condition of water stress, guard cells zinafunga stomata. Na ndio maana baadhi ya plant, kwa mfano zile cam plants zimetengeneza crustacea acid metabolism ili ziweze kutumia gas mchana bila kufungua stomata. La sana, very interesting. Uzulia tu vipindi vya nutrition kule nyuma, kaviangalie vipindi vya nutrition. Unaweza kaingia kwenye playlist hapo kaangalia vipindi vya nutrition ili uelewe cam plants zinafanya hiyo mechanism. Okay, now we are continuing kwamba they are occurring at interval the guard cell and they occur in pair side by side with a pore between them called stomata. So guard cell have a distinctive shape and they are the only epidermal cell that contain chloroplast. Only epidermal cells that contain chloroplast. The rest being colorless. The size of the stomata is adjusted by the turgidity of the guard cell, as will be explained later in the part of opening and closing of stomata. So regarding the guard cell ni kwamba they are the only epidermal cell which contain chloroplast, and the reason behind why they contain chloroplast, it is because one among the theory for opening and the closing of the stomata, it uses sucrose, and the sucrose is the end product of is just the end product of photosynthesis. If we are taking the end product of photosynthesis, and then after taking that end product of photosynthesis, we are adding some of the materials to get it, or we are combining the sugars to get it, sucrose. So that is one among the end product of photosynthesis. So in other words, I can say that the guard cell, they require chloroplast in order to perform well their function. So in order to perform well their function, they require chloroplast as compared with other types of epidermal cell. So now let's move to Google and let's see some of the photos for the guard cell and the epidermal cell, and then we will come back to the notes. Now I've tried to find different images so that to show you. I know some of you have not come across about this. These are the lenticles, and this is how they appear. We have the dead cork cambium, here the living parenchyma, and here the lenticle. So between the living parenchyma we have the intracellular air spaces. So that's why the lenticles also, they are the sites of gaseous exchange, like how the stomata are. And if we want to see in the tree, it is how the lenticles they appear, the appearance of the lenticles on the back of tree, or you can see how the lenticles they appear on the back of tree. So this is the actual situation of life, and this is just the diagram. That is the lenticles. And as we say, the epithelium, sometimes they can be modified to the back, or from the back of the tree in the secondary growth. And the secondary growth, as we know, it involves the increase in the gill of the plant. So as you can see, this is how, or this is what you can explain in the back of tree. And we have different backs of tree here, and I know for our environment we have come across most of these back of trees. You can see a tree like pines. Every kind of tree which undergoes secondary growth, they have a back. So I was just trying to show you this, and then from there we talked about the dead seed endosperm, in which the dead seed endosperm, in which the epithelium, I mean the parenchyma cell, they use it for storage of food. So this is the dead seed tree, the dead seed tree. And if you go to Google to search for this, you can find this is how it is grown. And this is just for ornamentation needs in home, but sometimes it can be grown like this. So this is the dead seed tree. And from there, let's see about the arrangement of these cells in the different categories of plants. You can see how the epidemio cell, they are arranged in dicots and grasses. In the grass there is regular arrangement, then there are guard cell in intervals. Then in dicots there is no regular arrangement. So peptide signals and transcript factors, there are different factors which lead to this arrangement in the dicots and the monocots to become different. And this is also the diagram which tries to explain the same phenomena in the anatomy of the dicots and the anatomy of the monocots. But what we are talking of the epidermis, the layer which is above the leaf. You can see, I hope you can see here the diagram. We have the cuticle, then we have epidermis. So epidermis secretes the cuticle, and there are different pores like this one which has guard cell, and it is used for gaseous exchange to make sure there are. So here we'll have the xylem and the phloem, the xylem bundle and the phloem bundle in this. If you don't know about the stomata, this is the picture which show how the stomata tend to appear, and it is a magnified one. It is magnified. So how the stomata appears in the leaves with the pore, it has guard cell, and then it can be opened or closed to allow the passage of air. You see, this image is from Aram stock. So all of these, they just tell you about different specialization of the parenchyma, and the other diagrams we shall explain them later. Now we are saying that the stomata allow gaseous exchange to occur during photosynthesis and for respiration, and are most numerous in leaf epidermis, though they are also found in the stem. So almost many of the parts of the plants which are green, they contain stomata, because we know that the guard cell, they have chlorophyll. They have chloroplast containing chlorophyll. So Water vapor also escapes through the stomata, and this part of the process is called transpilation. So transpilation also takes place through the stomata, and that's why the cells they are called as guard cells. Sometimes epidemial cells grow hairs like extensions, which may be unicellular or multicellular, and serve a wide variety of functions. Now, what are some of the functions of these hairs which are grown from the epidemial cell? First, in roots, these cells they are unicellular hairs. The unicellular hairs grown from region just behind the root tip, and increases the surface area for absorption of water and mineral salts. So in roots, these are called as root hair cells. Root hair cells. So they are cells having the hairs, increasing the surface area for absorption of water and mineral salts. In climbing plants such as goose grass or Gallium aparine, hooked hairs often occur and function to prevent the stems from slipping from their supports. So after discuss different kinds of plants, and I will try to go to Google and to show you how are they appearing, because I know some of these plants, even if they are present in Africa, but we don't know their name in English. So this is just an example: the goosegrass or ganglion. The hooked hairs, they are present to prevent the stems from slipping from their supports. Kwa hiyo hizi zinakuwa ni plant ambazo zinapanda, let's say hata kwenye mazao tu ya kawaida, maharage, kiwekea tu labda kiwekea mti fulani kichomeka tu, una follow ile tree wenyewe kwa sababu ya presence of hairs. Then they may assist the cuticle in reducing water loss by trapping a layer of moist air next to the plant, as well as reflecting radiations. So tunaposema trapping the layer of air, ndio maana nasema one among the factors affecting transpiration is wind, the speed of wind. Why? It is because in a high speed of wind, it tend to pull away the layer of air or the layer of moist air, and thus increases the rate of transpiration. While if we have the slower speed of wind, then the layer of air remains there, and then at the end of the day we'll end up with having low rate of transpiration. Itaenda kuidiscuss vizuri kwenye transpiration. Some hairs are water absorbing, notably on the xenophytic plants, yani plants adapted for dry conditions. Yani hair inakuwa kwenye plant epidermis, lakini ina absorb water kutoka kwenye atmosphere. Xenophytic plants, kama ambavyo tutaenda kudiscuss plants ambazo zimekuwa adapted kwenda kwenye kuishi kwenye different conditions. Other may have a mechanical protection function, as with the short stiff bristles. Kuna kuta baadhi ya miti inakwenda kama vimiba hivi, vimiba. Kwa sababu gani? Ili ukienda pale kuleta vurugu ikuchome. So the hairs of stinging nettle, or sometimes it is called the utica dioica, are hard with a bulbous tip, and they knock against an animal's body. The flagell tip breaks off, and the jagged end pierces the skin. The cell contents at their bases enter the wound, acting as an irritant poison. Hairs may form barriers around the nectars of flowers. Ona, mmea is very intelligent. Umetengeneza mechanism ambayo hautaki kuibiwa nectars. Kwa hiyo unakuta animal akija pale, mmea una release, mmea hizo miba zake zikimchoma animal, kuna chemical inakuwa released pale, inakuwa irritant, and then at the end of the day mmea unakuwa mbakia safe. So tunasema kwamba tunasema kwamba hairs may form barriers around the nectar flowers, preventing access to crawling insects and helping to promote cross pollination by large flying insects. Kwa unakuta these plants zinakuwa very intelligent kuweza kusababisha cross pollination iweze kutokea hapa. From there tunasema kwamba glandular cells are also a common feature of the epidermis. So tumeshamaliza function of hairs, tunaendelea mbele. The glandular cells, they are also common features of epidermis, and these may be hair-like. They may secrete a stick substance that traps and kills insects, either for protection, or if the secretion contains enzymes for digestion and subsequent absorption of food. Such plants may be regarded as the carnivorous plants. Kwa kuna some of the plants supposed ni carnivorous, zinakula wadudu. For example ni figure 6.3D. All of these figures ambazo na mention kwenye session zinatoka kwenye biological science book. So glandular hairs are sometimes responsible for the scent given off by plants such as on leaves of the lavender or lavandula. Example of carnivorous plant is potato. Now let's move to Google and to see the diagrams of some of these hairs and some of these carnivorous before we are moving to Mesophyll is another example, or as another specialized Parenchyma Cell. So in the previous explanation, when we were explaining about the hairs, and we explained that we have the climbing plants. Climbing plants, this is the diagram showing the example of the climbing plants. Unaona hii mimea inakuwa inapanda kwenye wall, unaziwekea wires then zina climb. Unaweza kuona pia kuna different pictures. If you search for climbing plants in Google, you can find the pictures like this. So all of these, the climbing plants climbing on houses, on walls. So they contain hairs which help them to climb different supports. And we had an example of these climbing plants. We said it is called Gallium aperine plants. So this is the Gallium aperine plant, and I know sometimes we can come across this plant in different condition, or plants similar to these, because most of them they are looking similar. So to differentiate them, it can be a tough work, but sometimes we come across plants which are similar to this. But the more important thing that you need to note is the needle-like structure. The needle-like structure help them to climb. The needle-like structure on the epidermis. And then from there we had another plant which we gave an example in the protection, the role of hairs in the protection. We said about the plant Articadioica, the plant Articadioica. If you remember, we said about it, and this is how the plant appears. This is how the plant appears. As you can see here, the Articadioica family. So there are different plants, as you can see, and from there we have the plant which we have discussed, that the glandular hairs are sometimes responsible for the scent given off by plants such as leaves of lavender or lavandula plants. So these are the leaves of this plant which is called the lavender, and it gives off the scent smell. It gives off the scent smell. So we have finished about the epidermis, and now we are going to start our discussion about the Mesophyll. So we have discussed about epidemis. Now we are discussing about the Mesophyll. The difference between epidemis and the Mesophyll is just is not much in such, because as you can see, the epidemis tend to cover the outer layer. Epidemis cover outer layer, but the Mesophyll, they are the one which are present inside. So you see palisade parenchyma, or you can call it as palisade mesophyll, and spongy parenchyma or spongy mesophyll. So we have two categories of mesophyll, the palisade and the sponge. All of these, they contain the intercellular air spaces, and they perform the function at the major levels of parenchyma, which we discussed. So I've just shown you the diagram of these part of these mesophyll cells, so as when we will be moving to the North Sea, we can complete all the things regarding the explanation of these cells. So we have two categories of these cells, and then we shall move to endodermis. We'll move to endodermis. I want us to see all of them before we are moving. We'll move to endodermis. So unaweza kuona kwenye hii diagram jinsi gani ambavyo endodermis inaonekana. Unaona phloem, una xylem, una epidermis, then kuna exodermis au parenchyma, then kuna cortex ambayo ni parenchyma cell. Cortex ni parenchyma cell, unaona zina intercellular air spaces. Then kuna pericycle, kuna endodermis also there. They are the cells of parenchyma nature. Unaona zimezungushwa hizi ndo endodermis. Toka hapo kuna root hair cells na nyinginezo kama hizo. Pia tukileta diagram kama hii hapa, inakuwa inaonyesha pia vizuri pericycle, then the endodermis, the one which are in red color, zimezunguka. Kwenye diagram kama hii hapa, endodermis, and from there we have the pericycle tumeziona hapo. So all of these, they are just different specializations. Now let's go back to the notes so that we conclude our discussion on the parenchyma. So now we are continuing with the mesophyll cells. As you have already seen, the mesophyll cell, from the after epidermis we have the mesophyll cell. So after epidermis we have the mesophyll cell, and this mesophyll cell tend to form the packing tissues. This is the packing tissue found between the two epidermal layers of leaves, and consists of parenchyma layers of leaves, and consists of modified to carry out photosynthesis. So photosynthetic parenchyma is sometimes called chlorenchyma. The cytoplasm of such cells contains numerous chloroplasts, where the reactions of photosynthesis occur.